Thank you. Thank you for the very kind introduction. Very excited to be here. We hope you will support and text and donate all night. I did see, I believe, former Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner here, right here. My understanding, I haven't confirmed this yet, but my understanding is if you donate so much to Kind tonight that you go into debt, he will be bailing you out by the end of the night. Could be a controversial policy, I don't know. Why are we here? We know why we're here. We're here for immigrants, for refugees, for children. And every time you all support them, I think it's based on a principle that human beings are more important than places, that human rights should be more important than borders, that our obligation to each other, to people, to humanity has got to mean something more than where people happen to live, that our obligation to the people who are trying to escape repression and our capacity to think about them in our daily lives, to care about them, it shouldn't stop at the water's edge. There's no moral reason for that, even if that's where we know our law stops and our government stops and our nation's authority stops. And so we also know, even if that's, I would argue, a value that probably most people in this room share, we also know that history shows very little compassion for the problems of what are sometimes considered faraway people. I was thinking about America's renewed interest in this wall, and it follows a long-running instinct to turn away from the world. It's even a cliche, I think, by now to note that we're a nation of immigrants, but every generation it seems like there are people who want to be the last immigrant generation. And it doesn't even take a political expert to observe that a lot of the people who invoke the Bible for their politics or their ideas about how policy should work seem to forget that, the Bible starts with a lot of stories that are built around lax immigration issues. Have you noticed this? Adam and Eve are they're refugees displaced from Eden, right? They're the first refugees. The Israelites, they spend 40 years literally immigrating from Egypt to Israel. Pharaoh is he's the bad guy, right? We agree on that? Pharaoh's the bad guy. Why? Because he won't let them cross the border. Let my people have a green card. And Moses, he's practically a lawyer for Kind, if you think about it. It's your first Kind joke of the night, right there. And God doesn't leave a lot to interpretation in the Bible. In Exodus, he says, "You shall love the stranger, for you were a stranger in the land of Egypt." Pretty clear. Someone get Jeff Sessions a copy of this thing. Now, I think it's fair to say today there's plenty of policy that's not built on loving the stranger or fairly assessing who has a basis for asylum or when a child merits representation. And when kids are in danger, when migrants are vulnerable, we know the world's reaction can be lacking. You look at the crisis in Syria, 2.6 million children living either as refugees or on the run. It rivals the last displacement of this magnitude during World War II, when you had the horrors of a refugee crisis and genocide. I was talking about this recently with Norm Eisen, who served as the first Jewish ambassador to the Czech Republic, and I think it's probably familiar to some of the people and lawyers and diplomats in the room. And he was telling me about the insight of his mother. And she grew up there, and she was sent to a concentration camp. Her name was Frida Eisen. And he was recounting how when he was growing up, she would always tell him, "Norm, never forget, people are worse than they appear." Because when the Nazis came to take us to the camps, she would say, no one in the village tried to save us. None of our friends tried to help. Everyone there let it happen. And he also told me the other thing she would recount to him growing up, which is, "Norm, never forget that people can also surprise you." Because she says when she was in that camp, there were people around her starving to death. But it was a young German guard who would come by at night, and he would sneak her apples through the fence. And she credits him with saving her life, and that's how she made it. And it's a dark lesson. It seems to apply today in at least a few ways. First, that the challenges that face us do show how much harm can be done when people just stand by. And depending on what you do and what you've been working on, you probably think about that a lot. But second, in our very divided climate, we make assumptions about other people at our own peril. Because if you view that story at a distance, you might assume the villagers were probably the good guys, and that guard there must have been the bad guy. And then when you learn Frida Eisen's story, you learn it's not that simple. And third, if I may, darkness doesn't always have to give way to darkness, because ultimately what matters is not the problems that we find, it's what we do about them. And to use her formulation, the people who may surprise you, who risk everything to help, how do we support them? How do we dare even try to become them? I think the work we're going to look at and support tonight is the work of people who are living and exploring that question. And so with that, I turn to one of our featured speakers tonight who's lived that, Lord Alf Dubs, who we mentioned earlier. He was a 6-year-old refugee in Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia when he was saved by this kinder transport program. We're going to hear from him later, and right now what we're going to hear is him narrating a short film about the potential for change when societies do step up and protect children fleeing from danger. And I should mention the video does contain some images, of course, of violence and some graphic images that are necessary to the telling, but we wanted to tell you that in advance. Let's take a look.